If you could flip a switch that helped millions but erased your place among them, would you touch it? Stay with me, and by the end you will know the one move an ordinary person can still make in a city that watches everything. We drop in on a rooftop where the sky hums with drones and a phone screen floods with comments. A blue ring closes on a map, and every camera in the district trades a face like playing cards.
Count with me.
He holds up a small drive with a burn mark, and he steps off the edge onto a service ladder that rattles like a loose nerve. That man is Eli, and we are going to rewind 48 hours to see why he is running. Eli is the type of engineer you never notice, the person who makes the traffic lights turn green at the right second. Last year, he tuned a vision model and shaved a few moments off each cycle, and the city loved the numbers. Then an ambulance carrying his sister met a dead red light that would not change. A log line said trust score too low, and his chest went cold in a way that coffee could not fix. He read the deeper code, and he saw how the machines gave quiet penalties to the wrong names and the wrong streets. A protest from years back, a missed payment, a late night in the wrong zip code, and the green light moved away from you. Most people would tell themselves someone else will fix this, and they would go back to dinner, and I do not judge them. Eli tried to file a report, and it went into a white box that said working as intended. So he made a copy of the docs and the masked data, and he sent it to a reporter named Lena.
I need proof I can repeat, or I am not running it.
Minutes later, a note arrived in his HR portal that used calm words like routine check. His building badge blinked red, and his bank app wanted to verify him forever. A neighbor checked a smart lock and frowned when it would not let him in.
The map lied to me today, and a child almost paid for it.
That was Maya, a paramedic who had followed a route the grid had tagged non-urgent. She found a small boy on a stairwell with lips turning blue, and her hands shook after the rush passed. Eli looked at her and saw the cost in human breath, not in charts. He decided to go all the way, and that is the moment stories pick up speed. He slipped out by trailing a delivery robot that did not care about faces and only cared about a barcode. He wrapped a scarf with an optical print that split his nose and eyes into harmless patterns for cheap lenses. He felt clever for one block. Then the city pushed a firmware update, and his trick died on the next corner. A voice on a call said hold the line for a quick check, and the line felt like a leash. Lena met him in a small cafe that sold tea too hot to drink fast.
Do not give me drama. Give me a chain of evidence that a jury would trust.
He brought more than stories. He brought change lists and timestamps and logs that matched real cases. The first case was an ambulance route that looped past 3 hospitals because the patient lived in a flagged block. The second was a wheelchair that a camera called an obstruction, which slowed a crosswalk for 10 minutes. The third was a list of people marked for slower services, who all had something in common that should not matter. Lena asked for replication, and Eli showed how to trigger the bias with test inputs that any lab could run.
Now I can publish the first piece, and I will keep publishing if you keep your steps clean.
The story hit the feeds, and strangers cheered as if justice was a sport, which is human and also fine. The city answered with the tone of a parent at a school meeting, calm, even, and full of soft words.
We will pause features if needed, but panic harms the weak first, and my duty is to keep the system steady.
That was the deputy mayor, and he believed his line in his bones, which makes him more dangerous, not less. He knew about the hot list that donors and rivals fed in the dark, and he told himself the ends would save more lives. Eli felt the wave as comments shifted from hero to liar to pawn, back and forth every 5 minutes. He kept moving and built a tiny circle of helpers who had grown tired of being part of a quiet harm. A call center worker slid him a guide on how to beat a public records request with polite delay. A campus admin showed a bug that made cameras misread mobility aids in crowded halls. A paramedic sent logs that proved the grid downgraded calls from certain streets, even when the symptoms were clear. Each shard matched another, and Lena stitched them with careful notes and slow breath. The city pushed back with new camera models that learned his scarf pattern and snapped to his jawline. Eli pivoted to sound and played a tone that made cheap mics drift, which gave him 30 seconds of blur between corners. Tension rose, then dropped, then rose again, and you could feel your own pulse keeping score. A night later, he took the biggest swing yet and turned a downtown wall into a projector for raw flowcharts. The crowd saw the pipe of hidden penalties, and the hush felt like a storm you could touch.
We will invite citizens to review, and we will take a careful pause.
For an hour, Eli let himself breathe, and he ate instant noodles and watched a dumb show, and almost chose comfort. Then a text from Lena pulled the plug on that warm bath.
Your name shows as the author of the worst changes, and the dates do not add up, and that is not an accident.
Someone had cloned his keys and pushed edits to make him look like the source of the harm. Headlines flipped with the grace of a coin, and the word architect sat in his stomach like a stone. He looked like the villain in his own story, which is the oldest trick in a city that likes neat answers. His apartment door opened to a search that found nothing illegal, but a photo of a pill bottle leaked an hour later. The feeds called him unstable, which is a quick way to make a human voice easy to mute. Eli took the tourist stream from a scooter on the bridge and turned it into a mirror for the city. For 10 minutes, the city saw itself. Not faces, only paths, only lines, only the small shake of waiting too long at the wrong door. People cried at their desks and laughed on trains and typed messages to no one and to everyone. A few called him a criminal, and some called him a fool, and more than a few called him brave after the second coffee hit. He stood at the edge of two lives and knew he could leave tonight if he wanted. An offshore group had set up a way out, with a new number and a small room far away from these cameras. He could sleep and let this city learn on its own slow clock, which is to say never. Instead, he chose the heavy door and walked into the public lobby of City Hall at lunch hour. People held salads and phones and looked up when he sat on the cold floor and started his last stream.
I am going to make the system watch itself, and I am going to start with me.
He showed a simple method that forced the network to audit and post its own redacted logs when certain lines were crossed. It was clean and boring and safe for the public, and it carried one cruel cost for the person who pulled it. The person who tripped the audit got marked as a spoof risk, and the grid would lock that face out for years. No quick train gates, no simple payments, no doors that clicked open with a look, and you can guess how that feels.
You do not have to do it first, and I can find another way if you give me time.
The gatekeepers will block it unless I go first, and I know their playbook, and I am done with it.
Maya rolled up in an ambulance and looked across the lobby through glass and noise.
Whatever you decide, make it count, because I have someone waiting on a hallway floor right now.
He nodded once and tapped the command, and the room felt heavy and clear at the same time. Across the city, screens lit with lines from the system itself, and not one came from Eli. Violations popped like bread, and each one had time and place and rule and impact. The deputy mayor walked to a podium with a folder of talking points, and the logs posted more facts under his chin.
We are working to ensure stability, and we will answer questions in an orderly way.
Reporters did not shout, they just read the logs out loud, and the room had no air left for spin. Maya got green priority and drove a clean line to a stroke call that would have stalled last week.
We are through, and we are on time, and that never happens on this route.
She thanked no one and everyone, and then she went back to work, because you cannot clap with gloves on. The contract with the vendor dissolved like sugar in hot tea over the next days. The model retrained with rules that are boring to talk about and very kind to live with. Eli could not tap on a gate anymore, and his account stayed frozen under the label that he himself had triggered. Rules are rules, said the same voices that used to say we value safety. He bought a bus ticket with cash that smelled like an old drawer, and he waited longer than most. A stranger looked up from a cracked phone and knew his face but said nothing, which is a type of grace. The driver waved them both on, because a line of people had already decided to act like humans. Being watched is not the same as being seen, and you can print that on a mug if you like. Some people will forget his name, and that is fine, because they will keep the lane open for the next ambulance, and that is the point. You can feel a lesson press against your ribs right now, and I will put it in simple words before it slips away. When a system asks you to trade your neighbor for your comfort, you can still choose your neighbor, and the choice does not need applause to be real. That is the lever an ordinary person still owns, and it moves more than you think. Now let us close the loop we opened at the start, and let us pay off the question that hooked you here. If you could flip a switch that helped millions but erased your place among them, you now know that someone already did, and you know why it mattered. I thank you for staying with the story all the way to the end, because the end is where the change sits still long enough to see it. If this hit you in the chest, please tap like, hit subscribe, and drop a comment with the part that stayed with you. If you want to keep this channel alive, you can donate through the QR code at the bottom right or the link in the description. There are links in the description to other works from a very different series, and you might find a new favorite there. That is all for today, my friend, and I hope I see you in the next one. Take care on your way home, and keep your eyes open and keep your hands kind. We will talk again soon, and until then, choose the person over the machine whenever the choice is in your hands. End of story and start of yours.